I get a lot of letters and emails from listeners and from people who subscribe to American Free Press. I wish everybody who subscribed to American Free Press was a listener to RBN, and I wish every listener to RBN was a subscriber to American Free Press, but it's not always that way. But in any case, I do get a lot of letters and emails. I try to answer all of them as I can. I get behind, particularly in the emails. I've gotten better about responding to the letters that come in. Try to respond to them right away, get them out the door, but sometimes I am delinquent. And unfortunately, I misplaced a written letter that came in to me, which I wanted to read verbatim on the air, and I wanted to respond in person to that person, but I misplaced that letter. But the point was this: it was regarding a comment that I made here on the program the other night, in the midst of a discussion about that favorite topic, that issue of Zionism, Judaism, Jewish political power in America. All of those things that combine together form a selection of taboo topics. Well, not on this program anyway, but generally taboo topics. And in the course of that discussion, I made the suggestion, I stated my opinion using a rather clever turn of phrase long attributed to Minister Louis Farrakhan, that I believed that Judaism was a gutter religion. Well, folks, I'll tell you what, I don't apologize for saying that, because that is my opinion. However, the person who wrote the letter, a very well-meaning person, said that they didn't think I should use that kind of language because it's inflammatory, number one. Number two, this is America where we do have freedom of religion, and we shouldn't criticize other people's religions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But on the whole, they said they liked the program, and I appreciate that. But, I hasten to add that in this day and age, you cannot get away from not talking about religion and other people's religions, because we constantly have other people's religions rubbed in our faces. So, that having been said, I see the time rolling towards the break. I want to pursue this a little bit when we come back, which indeed I shall. So stay tuned here, folks. Listen to the broadcast carefully during the break, because you're going to hear what our sponsors have to tell you. And what they have to tell you is just as important as what I have to say. So stay tuned. Listen carefully. Be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Michael Collins Piper here, inviting you to call in here tonight, talk about anything you want, up to a limit, of course. The number here is 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Well, before we went to the break, I was talking about a friendly complaint, a friendly criticism I received from someone who didn't like me using the term gutter religion to describe the Jewish religion. Well, that is what I believe about it, based upon my study of the Jewish religion, based upon the behavior and attitude of leaders of that religion towards the people of other religions, based upon the manner in which I have seen the Jewish-controlled media in this country defame and hammer and smear and muddy so many other religions. Years before they were doing it to Islam, they were doing it to all manner of Christianity, even, ironically, certain brands of so-called Christianity that inexplicably, to me, put the Jewish people and the state of Israel up as icons on an altar to be worshipped. But needless to say, for years, the Jews and their leaders and their shills in the mass media in this country have been smashing Christianity, dragging it through the mud, soiling it, talking about it in the same kind of perverse ways that you hear Eric Huffschmidt talk about all manner of subjects on his broadcast. But in any case, so the Christian religion has always been fair game and been in the gun sights of the Jewish-controlled media in this country. So I find it rather ironic that anyone should even raise a question about anyone having a response to that, first of all. Second of all, of course, we have seen what has been done to the Muslim faith in the years since 9/11. The term Islam has been turned into a dirty word. But even to a more direct point here regarding the Jewish religion. Now, there are those who say Judaism is not Zionism and Zionism is not Judaism. Well, I believe that Judaism is Zionism and Zionism is Judaism if you study it carefully, if you look at the totality of the information which is available from a wide variety of sources, historical and modern. But I would add further that in looking at the Jewish religion, you also do find so many things about it that are just not quite what you would expect from something which we are told is somehow, quote-unquote, holy. I refer, of course, to the teachings of the Talmud, which is at the core of the Jewish religion, which teaches about the superiority of the Jewish people, this idea of chosenness, etc., etc. Now, even going beyond that point, I would add this, that, we talk about how we have freedom of religion in this country, and I'm all in favor of freedom of religion as long as someone's religion doesn't cause them, for religious reasons, to infringe upon the religious thoughts and feelings of others, as long as one's religious teachings don't lead one to commit crimes against other people. Now, I could go into that subject, that very sensitive subject, which a Jewish writer caught hell for over in Italy, that issue of ritual murder, but I won't go into that right now. That's a topic for another time, a topic that someone of authority should be talking about. But needless to say, I don't believe that one's religious freedom should give one the authority or the right to practice ritual sacrifice on someone of another religion, to practice such a thing in the name of practicing freedom of religion. But even that having been said, I would say this much, that, we do talk about this freedom of religion in this country that the government is supposed to guarantee. But it's very, very interesting that one of the greatest advocates of religious freedom in this country, Thomas Jefferson, one of our most beloved, and rightfully so, one of our most beloved founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson shared precisely my views of the Jewish religion. Now, we will find on the Internet, coming from largely Jewish sources, efforts to proclaim Thomas Jefferson as some sort of grand friend of the Jews. But a close look at all of the circumstances, a close look at what Jefferson in fact really had to say, would suggest quite otherwise. Now, I'm not talking about famous quotes from Ben Franklin and George Washington, which the historicity of has been subject to debate. I'm not completely convinced that Ben Franklin did make his famous statement to the Constitutional Convention advocating a constitutional amendment barring Jews from the United States. I'm not convinced that that actually is true. I'm afraid it could be one of these things that someone cooked up for their own purposes, thinking it sounded good. nor am I absolutely convinced that George Washington made his famous quote, which escapes me, but which said something along the lines of what was purportedly said by Ben Franklin. However, there is no question but that Thomas Jefferson, while he did believe in freedom of religion, he also considered the Jewish religion, well, what he described it in a letter in 1819, he described Jesus as the greatest of all the reformers of the depraved religion of his own country. That is, Thomas Jefferson, our founding father, the author of the Declaration of Independence, considered Judaism to be a depraved religion. In a letter to John Adams, he commented on the Talmud and those revered teachings that guided the Jewish mindset then as they did today. He said, "What a wretched depravity of sentiment and manners must have prevailed before such corrupt maxims could have obtained credit. It is impossible to collect from these writings a consistent series of moral doctrine." But those are pretty tough words. They're coming from the guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence, a guy to describe Thomas Jefferson as a guy is almost sacrilegious, a statesman, a philosopher, a genius, a titan among men. Thomas Jefferson considered Judaism to be depraved. Well, I would have to agree with Thomas Jefferson based upon my own study of that religion, and as I say, bringing this full circle, I think I was absolutely correct in making that judgment. I don't mean to offend any of our Jewish listeners out there if you consider your religion to be the opposite of being depraved, but chances are, if you're a devout Jew, you probably find some things about the Christian religion or about Islam or Buddhism or any of the myriad other religions out there. I'm sure there's something about those religions that you don't particularly like either. But again, that is what makes this country great. We can agree to disagree. So